realize that we were told in 2017 that the government did have an official UFO investigatory team, and it was called, the aerial threat. They were looking into aerial threats. They saw it that way, and they let that story out purposefully. It was absolutely purposeful, and the people that were behind it were originally Harry Reid and John Podesta. Harry Reid was able to appropriate $27 million, I believe, to start this investigation into the Nimitz affair. I think that was the main one that they were looking at. And I think that they were planning on rolling this out if Hillary Clinton had won the election. Lo and behold, Hillary Clinton did not win the election. So they pulled things back a little bit, and I think that the Stars Academy and all that we've been seeing going on, as well as the New York Times article and what you've been seeing recently in various and sundry papers about the Navy changing their UFO reporting rules and all that. I think that this is all part of it, and that they're being very careful how they roll this out because they don't want to cause a panic. They don't want people to do a run to the banks or jump off of buildings out of fear. And I think that that's what we are seeing right now, and I think that we're a part of that tonight. Well, this is a part of that.
Well, I will say this, Earl. One thing I am kind of concerned about what's going on in Washington, D.C. I think, somebody right now, who knows what could happen, but maybe they might, to protect their own fanny at one point, maybe, bring it out, just, to protect their own self. I think we got a caller. Let's see here. Okay. Who do we have out there, caller?
This is James. How you doing, Gary and Earl?
Yeah, where are you calling from, James?
Ohio.
Ohio. How's the weather there?
Yeah. Hi there. No, it's actually been nice the last few days, so I'm happy with that.
Well, you got a question for Earl, James.
I do. Earl, what's the best piece of evidence you've ever came across in all your investigations?
In my own investigations, I've closed over 400 cases personally over the years, and there's a lot of really good cases. The one case that I brought up earlier, the Azusa UFO that was seen by 3 different people, and had 2. They were absolutely unconnected, and we had 2 reports about the exact same sighting on the, in the same area. One person talked about seeing the UFO and following it. It was the 2 women that kind of took chase after it, so to speak. And then there was another gentleman in the next town over who saw the UFOs leaving the area. And he described the exact same thing as the 2 women that had reported the UFO. That one might have the most evidence because, it was 3 different witnesses. There was weird military stuff that was going on around it. For instance, when I went to investigate that particular case, I was run off the road by a couple of military Humvees. I got up close to the gate. I was taking theodolite photos of where the women had seen the UFOs hovering over the mountainside. I was knocking on doors, handing out cards, and getting testimony from different neighbors and people. And when I was leaving the gate that has signs posted on it that, warning, federal land, you will be prosecuted, I was taking my photos. I was talking to my state director on the phone there. And when I left, I didn't think that it was a coincidence that these 2 military Humvees literally drove me off the road. I was sitting there on the side of the road with dust coming up from my wheels, a little horrified. I didn't know what they were going to do. I didn't know if they were going to pull me over and take me to some facility. I really didn't know what to expect. The fact was that I was pushed off the road. I stopped my car, and they kept on going. But that case, there were so many good witnesses that had seen something, and it was so weird, the area. itself and some of that military activity that we saw around that case, that I always seem to return to that one. It seems to be the one case that keeps on giving. Other than that, my TSA agent is one of my favorite cases, simply because I know him so well now. He's actually he's gone from case to friend, and I know the family really well. And the guy's a Boy Scout. He's not somebody that would make up a far-fetched story and risk his career and his livelihood and everything to go and tell about his encounters with extraterrestrials. So those would probably be the two main cases that I think of as far as evidence goes. We had another sighting that our state director, Jeff Krause, closed. It was a flying saucer that was over Los Angeles. The little girl got video evidence of, and also took photographs of it, so we were able to go and look at the EXIF data. We knew that it was the right time, the right place, and that the information was correct that this little girl brought to us. And she was with her aunt, and the aunt saw it as well. And that's a third case that I would consider a high evidence case and a very important one that was local to us here. So there's three for you. Three's a charm, eh?
Yeah. It kind of brought me to my one other question I wanted to ask you was, have you ever been approached by any shadowy government type people, to try to tear you some?
Has not happened yet. When I first became an investigator, I got a strange call from a guy who claimed that he was from the aviary group that was sort of a DARPA/CIA-funded group that were investigating UFOs. And it was a strange phone call, and I don't even know how the guy got my phone number, quite honestly. But that was a little strange. But other than that, no. Either I'm very lucky, or else I guess perhaps they are letting me do what I'm doing and don't mind that I'm sharing with the public that which I'm sharing. I do think that they want the information out now. I think we're being acclimatized to it. So,
well, thank you very much, Gary and Earl, for letting me ask the questions.
Well, thank you for calling in,
James. Thank you, James.
All right. Have a good night. Bye.
You take care, James. Yeah, he has some good questions, Earl.
Yeah, he's up there near Dr. Irena Scott, too. She's Ohio, Columbus.
Well, maybe they know each other. Who knows? But,
who knows?
Hey, one thing I want to talk to you about, the Men in Black. I've had a couple guests on recently that, they did some investigation. One was in Pennsylvania, where this one town, back in the 60s, they saw a lot of UFO sightings, and then all of a sudden, Men in Black appeared. But what was kind of strange, these Men in Black were, like I said, they were in black shoes, black pants, black shirt, black coat, black hat. But, in some of these cases, which were documented, they would drive up in a new old car. And what I mean, an old car, of a car like late 50s. And here it was in, like 67, 69. Kind of strange. And then, I was interviewing the guests, and then I said, well, have you ever thought about this? When we sent out a TV wave, especially back then, with the high-power TV transmissions, that when it goes out into space, it could take years to reach, or maybe some civilization could pick it up. So, you could think about like something in the 60s, maybe something 10, 15, 20 years old, they're now picking up. Or 10 years old, like Leave It to Beaver is being picked up. In 1969, the first run of Leave It to Beaver, for example. And I said, maybe that's what it accounts for when they come down to investigate our us, right? And asking questions about UFOs to us. Maybe that's why they're driving up in an old car that looks like brand new, because that's what they think that we're driving. You ever think of that one?
Who knows? It could be. I mean, we talk about, I was just talking with a skeptic friend today who's a good friend, and we I've known him just from our circle of music friends, but he wanted to talk about UFOs, and he was kind of talking about Fermi's paradox and the distance between stars, and that is an issue. Now, I believe, it's my friend and boss at Mufon, Jan Harzan, talks about when he saw the guy who ran Skunk Works, Ben Rich, back in the early 1990s, that he said that Ben Rich said that there was a problem in Einstein's equations, that there's a loophole that does allow for travel across the stars. And it has something to do with quantum entanglement. And so perhaps they are able to get here instantly. I don't know, personally. I don't know. But then again, now if they have the constraints of space-time as we know it, I have one idea that maybe they thought that we were of interest millennia ago, and maybe somewhere they have a factory parked, in the Kuiper Belt or something, where we wouldn't notice it. And sort of like Arthur C. Clarke in Kubrick's 2001, in the fictional 2001, when we went and we found a magnetic anomaly in the Tycho crater that once they dug it up and the sun hit it, it turned it on, and it was like a burglar alarm, and it kind of told them, hey, guess what? They're ready to meet you. Maybe something like that happened with us. Perhaps it was when we exploded the first atom bombs back in the early 1940s. 1947 was when the Roswell event happened, which all roads seemed to kind of lead to Roswell. And so maybe they had something parked in orbit, and they said, oh, it's time for them to meet us, and maybe they're churning out aliens. A lot of people talk about the little gray guys seem to act robotic, and maybe they are robotic. Maybe they were created specially to come and meet us. Maybe the fact that they're perambulatory and they look a little bit like us, they have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, maybe that's their way of comforting us. We really don't know. But that's one idea that I've had, is that perhaps they've created their emissaries that are coming now and taking our DNA and sometimes taking people from their bedrooms in the middle of the night. That all seems to be a new phenomenon that's been happening over the last 30, 40 years. And that is maybe just about right time-wise from when we triggered the burglar alarm. They realized that we had discovered the properties of nuclear energy and the destruction that can be wrought by such things. And that's when they ramped everything up. They turned on the factory, and they're sending out their emissaries and their craft, which are, high-tech drones, more or less. We see them as aliens, but perhaps they are robots. And that's one way to get around Fermi's paradox, that they've been here waiting, and we triggered it when we started playing with nukes.
Maybe they're walking among us too. That's what some of the scientists are starting to claim now, that you could be walking down the street and maybe the person next to you might not be a human.
You hear that, and you hear some strange stories. I know Timothy Good from Britain, the famous ufologist, talked about one story where there were these tall, blonde, seemingly perfect humans that this person saw in the airport, and they seemed to be reading their minds, and they seemed very malevolent, and they were given a very obvious telepathic message of "Don't mess with us."
Yeah,
and so that could be right. I mean, the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine. So why not?
Well, at least, Earl, you didn't say the Earth was flat, and we're not on a integrated circuit chip, in the metrics. So I want to thank you for that tonight. I think everything you're saying.
The Earth is round.
Yeah, the Earth is round, and it does turn, people. Otherwise,
we did land on the moon.
Yeah,
Just because there's one great conspiracy out there doesn't mean everything's a conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
My boss, my state director, Jeff Krause, I'll have to pay him another $5 for stealing his line, but one of his favorite lines is what he told me when I first started out with this. He said, keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. And that's a good little credo to hold on to.
Okay. Now